So I'll be the first to admit that this project is going to be a little bit unconventional, but I tell you what, it's going to be profitable, so wait until the end and cast your verdicts. Let me know in the comments what you think. I'm Kieran, and in today's episode I'm going to transform these simple discount store artist canvases into big profit. Make sure to stay tuned towards the end to find out exactly how much I price them for. First things first, let's get all these frames open so we can start working on them. So these obviously look brand new and I want to age them up. So I'm going to start with the back and I'm going to use a mix of brown and black ferny paint watered down with a spray bottle to just add some age. I'm not worried about it being too perfect because it's just going to help sell the appearance that this is a vintage piece. For this project I'm using Milk Chocolate and Black Knight by Ferny Paint. It's a highly pigmented paint which directly supports us and it is coming out very soon. I applied it on the back and then used some water in a spray bottle just to dilute it a little bit so that I could spread it around a lot easier, and then right at the last moment I added in some Black Knight just to add a little bit of different dimension and depth, sprayed that down and then blotted it off with an old rag. I tell you what, these frames when they're damp they're giving off a weird smell. It smells a bit like wee-wees. I'm sure it'll dry out. And that smell did go once they were dry. Okay, so now that they are all distressed on the back, they look like they've got some good signs of age. What I want to do is put a coat of white paint over the front, and for that I'm going to be using Ferny Paint in Antique White, just one good coat, and that's going to give me something to paint onto. I applied the coat of Antique White. Antique White is highly pigmented again and really covers really easily. So any marks from the brown underneath were covered over instantly. So I'm just painting them any which way. You probably can't see on there, but just to give it a bit of texture on the white canvas. Can you see? There's a bit of texture on there, and then on the edge I'm sort of painting it but not doing it too perfectly, just so that we can keep some of those signs of age. So you might be wondering, what's the point of doing all this painting? Well, we're going to create some nudist art. Yes, nudist art. If you saw in my thrift flips video the other day, I told you that nude art sells incredibly well, and then it struck me that I can buy artist canvases very inexpensively, and without a lot of skill I can show you how to create art that can be really valuable. I popped online, had a good look for some nude sketches, and I've compiled a link down in the description box of the images that I've used in this video. Now, I'm not a great artist, so I printed out the sketches so that I could transfer them onto the canvas using, what's it called? Carbon paper. I found a selection of images online and later found the ones with faces to be a little bit more difficult than the ones without. Good few images. I found most of them on eBay. You can have a look around and see what you can find. I particularly like these ones that are more of a sketchy type design because I think they're going to be a little bit easier. I used a really good loose ballpoint pen that just glided across the paper and literally just scribbled following the lines of the design, just as much as possible. On the faces, I just did an outline of the mouth and a little squiggle where the eyes and the mouth and the eyebrows and the eye would have been, and just didn't really pay too much attention to making it perfect. I scribbled over all of the areas. I found the ones without a face to be particularly easier than the other ones, and I did quite a few versions of this one because it just kept turning out really, really nicely. So if you are looking for one, I would recommend doing this backwards man. Whenever I'm crafting, I'm always thinking of like a story in my head. So where have these pieces come from? What am I imagining them to look like? Where would they have been? And for me, on these ones, I'm just trying to envision, you know, someone who is getting into art, getting into life drawing, and maybe they're going along to a class once or twice a week, and this is just the output of their sort of early stages. That's my vision, and I find that having a vision like that helps when you create the overall piece, because that's what I'm channeling when I put it together. The carbon paper leaves behind virtually an identical print of the picture, and then you can go over that again with your ballpoint pen directly onto the canvas. And again, I just sort of squiggled all over very loosely, just going for a very rough idea of the outline, and this just worked really, really well. For the hair, I just again sort of scribbled the ear and just followed that pattern all the way around. I did try using a black pencil at one point, but that didn't really show up on the canvas, and I wouldn't recommend using an ink pen for this job because we're going to add some water to this later, so you could end up with running, so a biro is really great for this project. I just carried on squiggling all over it on each of the patterns. For the ones that I wasn't really happy with, I just put them to one side, and as I did more and more of them, I found myself getting better and better at them. The first few were a little bit ropey, but as I got into it and understood what looked better and what movements were that looked better, I was able to get a much better result. And this really didn't take that long. It was just a great simple project that I could easily do in front of the TV just to keep myself busy whilst I am, you know, watching something with just one eye on the TV. For areas like the hands, I didn't bother drawing in hands or lines for fingers, I just squiggled in that area. I wanted to add a bit more colour to these pieces, so I used some burnt umber acrylic paint. I just went around the edge of the sketch, and then I used some water to create like a skin tone type effect. I used acrylic paint burnt umber for this project because I wanted a bit more of a vibrant brown than the Fernie Paint milk chocolate. Milk chocolate is more of like an antique brown, whereas this is more of just more of a skin type tone when it's been actually watered down. I went around all of the edge of the sketch, leaving you know, just some areas where it would have been highlighted, and then used the water to fill in generally the areas. And I actually found that it worked better to paint each section individually. So, you know, if you were painting the arm, paint the arm and then paint the back, or paint the leg. Painting each section in its own brushstroke just helped to make it look more intentional rather than painting perhaps the whole thing with one big brushstroke. Just keeping those brushstrokes to each part of the body just helped make it look a little bit more intentionally painted than, you know, doing it for just home decor. The acrylic paint is also really forgivable, and so if you get too much in one area or a little bit too dark, you can add water. You can also blot it off with a cloth, and anything that's a bit too dark, if you just rub your brush over that area, it will lighten up and act a bit like an eraser. So I really didn't have that many problems applying the acrylic paint over, and you can use it for shading and to just define that shape a little bit better. And this is where your sort of artistic flow can come into it a little bit, and you can really make your own stamp on these. The background was still looking a little bit stark, so I used some of the dirty water that I'd been washing my brush in to discolour the outer edge a little bit, just so that it looked more intentional and vintage. The background I wanted to be quite vintage looking. I wanted it to look like it had been in someone's artist studio. So just the
Old water worked better. I tried a few other colours like this black, which just really didn't work for me. I didn't think it looked very home decor. And then I tried green, which again, although it worked well with the burnt umber, really didn't work for me. So I let them dry and then painted over them with the antique white and then did the dirty water effect. And for anything that I didn't like, I was able to just easily paint over it.
Before you overpaint it, you'll need to seal in that biro. Mine's actually bled through, but it has created a really cool sketched effect that I quite like. So for the ones that I didn't really want anymore, I'm actually going to rework them again and see whether I can make this one nice. Next I'm going to distress them. I'm going to give them a quick sand with 240 grit sandpaper, and that's just going to knock back that brightness on them to make them look a little bit more aged and worn.
The sandpaper really does bring the whole thing together. It makes the brush strokes and everything just look so much more like an original antique piece, a real piece of art, and just takes away that newness look and feel of the piece.
And this is how my collection of frames came out. So I'm not an artist, but this is how they all came out. I think they actually look really good, and these are perfect for putting on a shelf or on a bit of furniture, and if you haven't clocked them already, I've actually been using them in a few of my furniture reveals. In my shop space, I think I'll be looking to sell these for around about £8 to £12 each, and I think they'll move really quickly. Let me know what you think about them in the comments. And if you'd like to see more of those furniture transformations, I'll leave a link to that playlist just here. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.